Stop right there. Who do you think you are? That shout wasn't some random yell from a neighbor or a voice in my head. It was aimed directly at my wife. She had her earbuds on, wrapping up the third loop of her regular morning jog when the words hit her. My wife spun around, puzzled, thinking it might be a mix-up. But no, the command was clearly meant for her. A stranger in an oversized security jacket stood there, arms folded as if he'd just nabbed a criminal. "Excuse me?" she said, removing one earbud. "How can I help you?" She looked more bewildered than upset, the way a teacher might pause to correct a student in the middle of class. The man moved closer, sunglasses pushed down, chewing gum as if starring in a low-budget cop show. "This is a no-running area. You're trespassing," he announced, nodding toward another guard posted stiffly on the sidewalk who bobbed his head in agreement like a broken toy. Now, to be clear, we've lived in this neighborhood for 3 years. Never once had there been a no-running rule, policy, or even a single complaint. My wife follows the same path every morning, waves to the same elderly man tending his petunias, and drops off treats for the neighbor's beagle. But today, this ordinary routine had suddenly turned into an offense. She tried brushing it off and kept jogging, hoping it was just a silly mistake or a bad joke. But they wouldn't let it go. 2 uniformed HOA security guards in polished new boots and carrying clipboards trailed after her, clearly ready for conflict. She halted again. "Look, I live here. I'm simply out for a run. I do this every single morning." The second guard finally chimed in. "This is private property, Mom. HOA regulations prohibit unauthorized activities. We'll need to check your identification." She let out a short laugh. Not amused, but the sound of someone fighting to stay calm. "Running is unauthorized now?" she asked. I didn't realize breathing fresh air had become a crime. "Please don't make this harder than it needs to be," the first guard shot back, stepping nearer. "We only want to confirm you belong here." That's when my wife understood this wasn't a simple error. This was deliberate harassment. Something felt deeply wrong. And these men weren't just carrying out duties. They were hungry for control. They demanded her ID, but of course my wife didn't have one on her. Who carries a driver's license during a casual morning jog? She told them evenly, "I live just 2 blocks from here. Follow me and I'll show you my ID, no issue at all." But they shut that down immediately. "No, Mom. We cannot allow you to proceed until we verify who you are." What kind of twisted reasoning was that? Stopping someone from proving they belong here because they haven't yet proven they belong here. Genius. By now, they had surrounded her as if she were a dangerous suspect instead of a long-time resident. But what they didn't realize, what they couldn't possibly know, is that my wife isn't your typical runner. She works for the CIA, not as a former agent or on leave, but fully active. Naturally, she wouldn't pull out that credential unless absolutely necessary. But you'd expect 2 amateur wannabes to have enough sense to drop it after a reasonable offer. She tried talking sense to them once more. "Listen, I'm just going home. Come along with me. I'll show you anything you need." Instead, they closed in tighter, muttering into their cheap radios as if gearing up for an arrest. "We have a non-compliant female subject, requesting backup." Backup? This had turned into some kind of over-the-top neighborhood power trip. It was obvious these guys were new recruits, probably pulled from mall patrols or failed military types, eager to wave their tiny authority around. And their leader, Clara, our area's notorious HOA president, a furious busybody with a massive ego and a hunger for dominance. She was the sort who would file complaints against squirrels for making too much noise. She had it out for my wife over ridiculous things, like the color of her running top being too noticeable during early runs. So this wasn't some coincidence, it was orchestrated. Clara had unleashed her fresh enforcers to create drama, but Clara had no idea what was coming. My wife gave them one final warning. "If you don't walk with me calmly, you're going to regret it." They chuckled. One even smirked and said, "What are you going to do? Outrun us?" My wife gave a small smile, something along those lines. The situation was escalating quickly. Tension filled the air. If those guards had any sense, they would have backed off immediately. But their egos far outweighed their authority. "I'm finished with this nonsense. I'm leaving," my wife stated, stepping away and turning to continue on her path. She had no interest in their games anymore. But one of the HOA guards, the stocky white man with the short buzz cut and bright vest, lunged forward and tried seizing her arm. Huge error. Before he could get a solid grip, she spun swiftly and drove her palm into his chest, sending him crashing backward onto the ground like a heavy bag of bricks. His partner's clipboard clattered to the pavement. The bald blackguard charged in, yelling, "Mom, don't make this any harder on yourself. She didn't flinch. As he reached for her, she intercepted his wrist in mid-motion, twisted it, and used his own forward energy to flip him straight down onto the grass like a practice dummy. He let out a groan and remained there. The third guard, a lanky fellow who looked like he'd just finished a cheap security training program, had stayed back at first, but seeing his colleagues on the ground made him reckless. "You're in serious trouble now," he shouted, fumbling for his radio. My wife approached him steadily. He made a grab for her shoulder and instantly wished he hadn't. She slipped under his reach and swept his legs out from under him with a smooth kick. He slammed into the sidewalk, tumbling over with a pained whimper. A neighbor from across the street let out a loud gasp that carried through the air and quickly lifted her phone to capture the scene. My wife glanced around, calmly fixed her ponytail, and said under her breath, "I did warn them." 3 grown men lay sprawled on the ground, moaning, their confidence completely broken. None of them able to process what had just occurred. More residents had come out onto their porches by now, staring in confusion but unable to look away. No one had anticipated the everyday jogger turning into a highly trained operative, yet here it was, and the HOA enforcers were paying the price for their arrogance. My wife stepped through the front door as if it had been an ordinary morning. "How was the run?" I asked, a slight grin on my face. She raised an eyebrow, dropped her hair tie on the counter, and replied, "Let's just say they won't be bothering me anymore." I chuckled, but she was completely serious. "Wait, did something actually happen?" She gave me a relaxed nod. "The new HOA guards tried getting physical." My smile faded. "Are you all right?" She smirked. "Of course I'm fine. They're the ones who aren't." We sat together, and she showed me the video a neighbor had already posted online. It was spreading rapidly. My wife effortlessly handling those security men like old news, captured in crisp detail. One resident had even edited in slow motion and intense background music. The online reactions were priceless. Then she placed one quick phone call. 10 minutes later, the security firm was in full panic mode. Within 2 hours, all 3 guards had been let go. Clara, that overbearing HOA president and ultimate busybody, attempted to smooth things over, but the damage was already done. The whole neighborhood was alive with talk. People who used to barely acknowledge us now greeted my wife with respect whenever she passed by. Wherever we went, others would murmur, "That's the one." A few even approached her asking for self-defense advice. It wasn't merely respect. It was a mix of awe, caution, and newfound authority. And from that moment on, no one dared trouble the CIA jogger again. The end.